It's time for the biggest story of the day. This is What Made the Cut with JJ and Alex on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Doug Smith brings you this portion of the show, an incredible selection of Kia, Subaru, Chevy, Jeep, Dodge, or Ram, and now Mitsubishi in the Doug Smith family of dealerships in American Fork, Spanish Fork, and in Linden. Nobody knows cars like Doug. Stephen Igoe, East Carolina football is his specialty. Stephen, thanks for joining us, man. A weird day, too, because also a byline that you probably didn't catch yourself having to write. You've got 3 East Carolina football players that have been arrested now after shots were fired and the police were called. Give us a little bit of an idea of what was going on in Greenville there.
Yeah, first off, thanks for having me, guys. And, yeah, interesting situation. And really, it's been several off seasons since I've had to cover a story like that, which, you know, I guess is kind of atypical of college sports. If you look across the country at times, it seems like you have at least one of these incidents every couple of years. But it's been several years since East Carolina had an issue. But, yeah, the main story is 2 potential starting defensive linemen, J.D. Lampley and Preston Carr, were amongst the 3 players. You know, all the charges are misdemeanors, not to try to blow it off because it is a serious situation. But I don't know what the long-term ramifications of this are. The police report's still coming out. It sounds like they were basically messing around like college kids and, you know, made a mistake they probably shouldn't have, and hopefully we'll learn from it. They are suspended indefinitely from the team with camp starting next week. And the defensive line was already a question mark for East Carolina. So if these guys are suspended for the first, 2, 3, 4 games of the season, which I haven't gotten any clarification on that yet, that'll be a big blow because defensively, as I'm sure we'll talk about, will be a massive question mark for this ECU football team in 2025.
It's a program that probably doesn't want that kind of a distraction right now because there's good feelings there with the Pirates, considering the way they ended the season last year, winning 4 of their last 5 games, including a bowl game over NC State, beating a Power 4 team in a bowl game. What's the momentum and the feeling right now with this program, regardless of what happened today entering this season?
Yeah, really, until this incident happened, it's been extremely positive. I mean, Blake Harrell, he was the interim coach last year when Mike Houston was fired mid-season, and Mike Houston was coming off a 2-10 campaign the year prior. Now, he had gotten ECU to back-to-back bowl games, so he had earned some grace, but they just got shellacked by in-state foe Charlotte, and that was kind of the game that got him fired, even though it was after the Army game they pulled the trigger. And, Charlotte, a very young program, ECU, a traditional, program in North Carolina, and, that just did not sit well with donors losing to Charlotte 2 years in a row. So they pulled the trigger mid-season. Blake Harrell kind of got a favorable schedule, but also had to rally the troops and did so in pretty incredible fashion. That also coincided with the insertion of Caden Hauser at quarterback the second half of the season. He took off. You had a first-year offensive coordinator in John David Baker, who runs, the kind of a combination of the Lane Kiffin and Art Browse offense. Really spread out horizontally, fast-paced, and that took off with Hauser being inserted at quarterback. So they put up some huge offensive numbers. They had a pretty veteran defense, and it all clicked under Harrell. He got the full-time job. So the vibes have been pretty awesome ever since until recently. But I still think overall the program's got a lot of momentum. People are excited about Blake Harrell. He's a player's coach. He relates very well to the fan base. And as you guys know, that can change with a few losses. But I still think the program is in pretty good hands right now.
So one of the interesting things with this BYU and East Carolina series is that we've seen enough of East Carolina over the past decade. If you're a BYU fan, the last thing you want to see is East Carolina show up in Provo or there in Greenville, because this is an East Carolina team that beat Provo most recently beat BYU in Provo most recently on a last-second field goal, and that's obviously And then in 2017, one of the rare really bad seasons for Kalani Sitake, his worst as a head coach. East Carolina there in Greenville get the win there, and now BYU goes back and has to play East Carolina again. I guess in a sense, this is the biggest opponent that's coming into Greenville that there's probably been in quite some time.
Definitely. I mean, NC State came in 22. North Carolina's came, a couple times over the last handful of years, and regionally, those are probably the biggest opponents, at least, since in the last 5 years. And then I would say BYU in the last 2-3 years for sure easily. I mean, ECU before college football has kind of gone down this path, had a lot of home and homes with kind of regional Power 4 conferences, but that's somewhat gone by the wayside. I mean, like they do have Wake and NC State, and I think West Virginia was scheduled to come in. They ended up buying the game out. So I was kind of worried, would BYU look to do that? But yet here we are, we're playing this game, and BYU has a very favorable non-conference schedule. I mean, I think this is probably their toughest non-conference game, assuming Stanford doesn't, figure it out somehow out of nowhere. But, yeah, so it's a tricky game for them. It's an exciting game for ECU. BYU does get a bye before this game, which I think will help, but they still have to travel. I think the place will be pretty jumping. If you're East Carolina, you open at NC State. You're going to be an underdog there despite just beating them. Then they do get an FCS game in week 2, but then they go to Coastal before hosting BYU. So that Coastal game's a little tricky. I think if ECU's 2-1 at minimum going into the BYU game, the place will be buzzing. If they're 1-2, maybe not. But I would expect that game to be very well attended, a big opportunity for East Carolina. Obviously, I would assume maybe a national TV game, somewhere on ESPN, ESPN2, just given the brand of BYU. But I'm looking forward to it. I know a lot of Pirate fans are as well.
Looking at your quarterback, he's going to have a challenge against this BYU defense that was the best in Big 12 last year. Tell us more about Caton Hauser, where his development's at, what he accomplished last year, and what they expect from him this season.
Yeah, Hauser he is a West Coast guy. He's technically originally from Vegas, so I guess he's more of a Vegas guy. But he moved out to Bosco Prep in California and was originally committed to Boise. Then he flipped to Michigan State, went there as a very young freshman, and just had a bad experience during the Mel Tucker situation. Kind of took some heat when he wasn't really the culprit there towards the end of that season. He hit the portal, ended up going to ECU. And I just thought from, the get-go talking with him after he committed that he was a great fit mentally for East Carolina. ECU's kind of built on having that chip on the shoulder mentality. And that only fueled him more when he didn't win the job last year. And really, I watched a lot of practices in the preseason. I was pretty stunned when they named Jake Garcia the starter. And when Hauser ran with the job midseason, I wasn't surprised, and it may have cost Mike Houston his job looking back at it. But either way, nothing's really that sexy with him, and maybe that's why he didn't win the job. He's he's definitely more of a gunslinger pocket passer guy, but he's mobile enough. If you watch any of the Military Bowl highlights, if you don't account for his legs, he can beat you there. And look, he was a really good navigator of the offense. He just gets ECU into the right reads. This is a heavy RPO-based offense, so you need somebody who can identify what the defense is doing. He's extremely intelligent. So nothing really jumps off the page about him, but he's a smooth operator, and if he limits the turnovers, which ECU led the nation last year in giveaways, still had 8 wins, I think they can be pretty explosive offensively this year.
What makes it – I mean, I think that, anytime you hit the road and you go 2 time zones, that's a tough go, but – what is it about, what fans give there in Greenville and what East Carolina delivers as a team? Like, it seems like they punch up to that opponent no matter how big they are.
Yeah, that's kind of been ECU's mantra. Definitely back in the 90s when Steve Logan was the coach, they would, quite honestly, they would play above their heads and take out the Miamis and Virginia Techs and West Virginias of the world, and then lose the next week to UAB, Southern Miss, et cetera. So that's kind of what they got known for. But I don't know. It's just always kind of been that mentality, like little brother. You think about it. You got NC State, you've got North Carolina, you've got Wake Forest and Duke, all in the state. And ECU has always kind of been like the redheaded stepchild for a long time. And so it's kind of that mentality. And so when they do get an opportunity, historically, I would say less so in recent years, although they are getting back to this. They do play up to the competition. And, historically when they get a big opponent like a BYU at home, it's a fun atmosphere. It is a great tailgating atmosphere. I highly encourage any BYU fans that can make the trip. It's a fun place to watch a game. The stadium holds 50,000. It's a great venue for a Group of 5 school. And I will say, too, as well, somebody who went to Provo a couple years ago to cover that crazy game on a Friday night, one of the best experiences of my writing career, just covering that game. Awesome atmosphere as well in Provo. So I think it's a pretty unique series. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are like, all right, why is this game being played? But I kind of enjoy it, from the outside looking in a little bit.
And as you know, BYU fans travel well. A lot of East Coast BYU fans will make that trip, so the atmosphere should be great when they play on September 20th. And BYU is going to be breaking in a new quarterback. That'll be game 3 for whoever the new starter is, assuming they stay healthy. What kind of defense are they going to be facing when they see the Pirates? What are you guys bringing? What are the Pirates bringing back, and what are some of the concerns that BYU should have with their defense?
Honestly, the defense, if you have a concern about it, I guess it would almost be the unknown at this point, which could be a good thing too, because they almost lost almost every significant contributor, especially at corner and a defensive line. Linebacker and safety, I think they're okay. They do return Jamarlee Riddle at safety, who I think has a chance to be an all-conference guy. And they've got some linebackers coming back that I think have a chance to be pretty good. But their whole D-line, they really had started a group of like 4 or 5 guys since their freshman season, since 2020. So all those guys graduated at the end of last year, so they're gone, besides J.D. Lampley, who was one of the guys who got in trouble this past weekend. So he's kind of a stud defensive end, so it's a big deal if he'll be available or not. But defensive line is a question mark. Corner is a massive question mark. It wasn't a great position to begin last year anyways, and they lost Savone Ravel, who was a potential first-round pick, to an ACL, and then after that it was kind of scramble mode the rest of the season. And a lot of those guys ended up transferring. The corners coach left. So that room is complete reset. They took a ton of older transfers. As you guys know, who knows with the portal? Sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't. We'll see. They have a new D coordinator. Josh Aldridge came over. He was an assistant at Ole Miss. He was a former coordinator at Liberty. I think one of the years they may have played BYU in the past in 22. So there's some familiarity there potentially. But Aldridge is similar to Blake Harrell, who was the DC before getting the head coach job. They'll be aggressive. They'll be very multiple. He's sharp. So I would say almost an advantage for ECU, and the disadvantage is the unknown. You've got a lot of new personnel, but also a lot of different ways this thing could go and ways they could line up come game day.
We cover the Big 12. Obviously, we were down at Big 12 Media Days in Dallas a couple weeks ago. And they didn't let us do the media poll because we were so bad at it the year before. We got
fired.
We got fired from doing the media poll because the guessing that the media did wasn't very good. The preseason media poll that the American did, where do they sit this year for that 2025 year, or have we seen that yet?
So funny that you mentioned that. So we have media days coming up, actually starting Thursday in Charlotte, and apparently, we got fired as well because there will be
what's the deal?
There'll be no media poll for the American this year because nobody had Army winning it last year, so we all look like idiots.
Yeah.
Here's the truth, though. In our defense in the media, how do you even know anymore because of the transfer portal? Like Utah State here in Utah has 86 new players this year. 86. How can you predict anything anymore?
You can't. I mean, really, like I understand. I get both sides of it because as a writer, like I do find it fun to do all this research and try to make a prediction, and like it gives us something to write. And as you guys know, hosting radio gives you something to talk about. So like when you take that away, that kind of hurts. But also, in the grand scheme of things, it is really kind of pointless if you think about it. Like especially now, there's so much change. Really, it's all based on, all right, does this team have their quarterback coming back? How many returning starters? And you kind of go from there, and then you just rank them. So I get why they're getting rid of it, but I do have to say I will miss it because I'm trying to rank. Hey, where do these random schools like Rice, North Texas? I kind of enjoy slotting them in. 10th, 11th, 12th, seeing how it all kind of falls.
The Temple Owls, don't forget about them. All right,
exactly. Yep.
It's always fun to be able to make these predictions, but now. It's like the new thing. It's like none of the media polls. We're all getting fired from making our predictions because it's so hard to make those predictions. But here we are trying to figure this thing out. And East Carolina and BYU are going to face off in a non-conference or out-of-conference matchup between the two. BYU heads to East Carolina again. And listen, if you're wondering about what this series was, it's 1-2 for BYU. They've only won one of those games out of the 3. They're hoping to, at the very least, even the series all time against the Pirates.
BYU's never lost to Oklahoma, but they're 1-2 against East Carolina. Go figure.
Gardner Minshew will do that to you back in 2017.
Actually, they did lose against Oklahoma 2 years ago.
Oh, sorry. They did. Yeah, that's right. Stephen, we appreciate it. Stephen Igoe covers East Carolina, and he gives us a little bit of insight onto the Pirates. And so, thanks for your help today, man, and good luck. And we'll catch you in that second week of the season here for the Cougs.
Appreciate it, guys. Enjoy being on. Yeah, we'll reconnect in September, I'm sure.
There you go.
Best of luck.
Absolutely. We'll see how this one goes. Stephen Igoe, East Carolina.